If you want to animate things like motion, zoom, or fade effects in your videos, then you're going to want to know about keyframes. And in this beginner-friendly video, you'll learn the basics of keyframing in DaVinci Resolve as I walk you through this step-by-step guide. And even if you're brand new to editing, you can follow along. So let's get into it. So what exactly is a keyframe? Well, in video editing, at a minimum, keyframes are used in pairs, with one being the starting position of an object or image and the other being the finishing position. You set those positions and the editing software automatically fills in the gap. To see what's involved, open a project in DaVinci Resolve, go to settings and set the project frame rate to 30 frames per second. Head to the edit page, import some media into the media pool, drag it into your timeline and follow along. If you're not already familiar with DaVinci Resolve, then check out these two videos to help you get started. Now, in this example, I'll use this PNG file, which is my channel logo. I'm just going to lengthen the clip to 11 seconds and resize the image to 1/4 of its original size. Now, click on your clip in the timeline to select it. Make sure that the playhead is at the start of the clip and go to the inspector. If you can't see the inspector, click this tab here. Let's start by animating a simple zoom. When you set a keyframe, it will be at whatever position that the playhead is at. Click the little diamond icon next to the zoom values to set a keyframe at the beginning of the clip. Click here to open up the mini keyframe editor to see what's happening. This becomes available once you add your first keyframe to a clip. Because there is already a keyframe set, to add another, you just need to enter the new value. Move the playhead 1 second forward and increase the zoom value. Remember that if this link symbol is enabled, the zoom X and Y values will change in unison. Double click in either of the zoom values and type the value 1. Then hit enter or just click outside the value field and voila, another keyframe is created. Take the playhead back to the start, hit the play button or use the shortcut, which is the space bar, and watch the image grow in size. In the keyframe viewer, you can add new keyframes. Move the playhead to the 2-second mark and click this diamond. When a keyframe is red, that indicates that it is selected. You can move, delete, or adjust your keyframes manually. Hover over the keyframe and you will see these 4 arrows. Click on the keyframe and drag it to where you want. Dragging it up or down will change the size, and dragging it left or right will change the position of the keyframe within the clip. If you hold Shift, then click and drag horizontally, you won't be able to drag it vertically until you release the Shift button. And likewise, if you hold Shift, then click and drag vertically, you won't be able to drag it horizontally. This is useful if you only want to change one of the values. Now, with the keyframe selected, hit backspace to delete the keyframe. Okay, now let's put it back in by going up to the inspector, double click in one of the zoom values and type in 0.25. Drag the playhead back to the start and play the clip. So now the ball gets bigger, then smaller. Let's add some position keyframes and make it move around the screen. Move the playhead to the point where the ball is at its largest. That's the second keyframe. If you have the snapping tool activated, you can drag the playhead near to the keyframe and it will snap to it. Or you can toggle to it by using these arrows in the keyframe viewer or these ones up in the inspector. So now set a position keyframe. Notice now that the line that represents the zoom keyframes has now dimmed down and the diamonds are not visible. And a new line that represents the position keyframe has appeared. Click on this arrow and you can toggle between the position and zoom values by clicking the desired option in this menu. Now move the playhead to the third zoom keyframe. And like most things in DaVinci Resolve, there is more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. To add a new position keyframe, you can either select the position line in the keyframe viewer and then click here. You could add one by clicking this diamond. You could enter a value in the position X or Y fields, or the way that we're going to do it is to select the transform tool, which will put this box around the ball, and then click and hold in the box to drag the box to where you want it. You can see as we move it around that the position values change. Let's put it down the bottom towards the left hand side around about here. So now the ball gets larger and then drops to the ground as it gets smaller. Let's make it bounce across the screen. Simply move the playhead to the position that you want the next high point to be. Then, with the transform tool selected, move the ball to where you want it to rise to. Let's make it bounce off the wall and across the floor, losing height and momentum as it goes. The project is set to 30 frames per second, so if we advance the playhead by 15 frames and move the ball to about here, then advance by another 15 frames and move the ball to here. Now advance the playhead by 30 frames and move the ball to the floor about here, and do the next rise and fall with a 25 frame spacing for each. Make each new rise a bit lower than the previous one. Okay, now set a rise and fall with a spacing of 10 frames. Do another rise and fall with a spacing of 5 frames, and finally one more rise and fall with a spacing of 3 frames. You can use the left and right arrow keys on your keyboard to move the playhead 1 frame at a time. And finish it off by moving the playhead to the 10-second mark, then go to the inspector and add a position X value of 1000. Okay, so it represents a ball bouncing across the screen, but it looks a bit rigid and old school type animation. Let's smooth it out a bit. A ball will bounce sharp, but will rise and fall with a curve. The position keyframe has 2 values, an X and a Y. The X is horizontal movement and the Y is vertical. We want to put a curve on the high points of the ball's travel, so select the position Y value line. You can do this by the menu that I showed you before, or you can hover over the lines to see which one is which and click on the one that you want. Make sure that the position Y line is selected. Select the first bounce high point keyframe, which is the 4th one along, and then click on this button with the downward curve and the dot in the middle. This will put a curve on the movement of the ball. If you adjust these handles, it will change the flow of that curve. Experiment with this in your project for different effects. For this one, just activate it and leave it as it is. You can click this one here to remove it, and then click this one again to put a fresh curve back on. Now put a curve on the rest of the following high points. Take the playhead back to the start and press play, and now it's looking more like a bouncing ball. One last thing to do, and that's add some rotation to it. Take the playhead to the first low point keyframe, then go up to the inspector and click on the rotation keyframe. Now click on this arrow to advance the playhead to the next position keyframe. Although we don't have the position keyframe line selected in the mini keyframe editor, we can tell what position we're at by looking at the viewer up here. Now click in the rotation value field and type the value 18. Now advance to the next low point position keyframe by clicking this arrow twice and double click in the rotation value field again and type the value 108. Repeat this process for the remaining low point position keyframes with the following values: 40, -4, -104, -156, and make this last one -360. And the end result will look like this. Now that you know what a keyframe is, how to set one, how to adjust it, and how to smooth out animation, you will be editing like a pro in no time. You can use keyframes to animate just about anything. You can pan across a photo, fade in text, or you can even use them to adjust audio volumes. The possibilities are endless. So with that said, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay creative.